Hello everyone, this is Greyshot17,
And Greyshot151 here.
and today we are covering a tier list of the top commanders in Company of Heroes 2. I almost said 3 there. I just edited
You're so
together
excited.
3.
You're so ready for that game to come out. I know.
Yeah, you know. But no, I actually edited together the one where I had the tank destroyers, like the compare. You can probably check that out. It's probably up on the channel already. But right now we're going through all the OKW. Note they have different commander portraits, so they are slightly different from how they looked before. And they have received some alterations from how they were before as well. So if you're expecting this to be exactly the same, probably not. Yeah. Like, for example, if we go through all of these, let's start with Breakthrough. I think Breakthrough right now is a very good commander because of Panzer to Sturm being very good against assisting against infantry. It doesn't retreat anymore, so that's a huge positive. You don't need to worry about that. The rapid capture is very good. The fact you can target locations with a direct strike with Breakthrough is also very good. Maybe not as powerful as a singular direct strike, but over an area it's still very effective. And the Jagdtiger is probably better than the Elephant overall, so I would say it's an S tier.
Yeah, it's easy S. The infantry is solid, both the special officer as well as Panzer Fusiliers. The call-in is amazing. It is probably the best call-in on the OKW side, just because of how much damage it can do to such a wide area. And then the Jagdtiger in a non-arty game is the best thing in the world. When the enemy has a lot of artillery, though, it can suffer. But I mean, like, that's just how you counter it. Just because it's so good. So yeah, easy S tier. Easy S tier.
And again, if you have a different spot you would place it in, leave it down below. Next up, we have Elite Armor Doctrine. Now this one's a little different because of how much this doctrine has changed since I've last done it. Because they fixed the Sturm Tiger, and they fixed it so well that they need to nerf it. Because they realized that the fixed Sturm Tiger is the most powerful thing imaginable. Yes. It is. So they did. And now it's still good, but it's not as good as OP Sturm. But still a very good tank. Heat rounds are always great, and I like the Panther Commander. And the emergency repairs are also great for getting your armored vehicle out of there or getting it operational very quickly. The 221.
Yeah, that 221 is just such a good asset.
Well, yeah, but then it upgrades into a 223 and you get resources. But someone brought up a good point. Is it really worth getting the unit in upon itself?
Yes, 100%, yes. I mean, it sucks if you lose it, especially if you buy the upgrade, but like, it's easily worth it in the beginning because it is like, it's a Kuba wagon, except better in every single way. You know, it's literally a unit that you would get to replace the Kubel. Because, like, what are you doing with the Kubel after a certain point? Minus recon?
Detecting territory.
Like, maybe, but most territory is, like, held by something. Minus, like, a quick cap. Like, what you're using for the 2221 is, like, the Kubel, except then in the late game you have a benefit from it, which is resources. Because, like, recon's great, but like I will take more fuel and more munitions any day, and especially for this, which means you can get armored faster by putting on the fuel point. On most maps, usually the fuel point is in like a safe location. Even not, just double munitions, mind blowing. So yeah, I would say that 221 is like easily insane, easily insane.
I will though. The reason I bring that up is because I do not believe Elite Armor Doctrine deserves to be an S tier. I think it's an A tier.
Think how broken the Sturm Tiger
was. When it was, yes.
It was easy S tier. But yeah, no, at this point, it's A+. It's A+. It should be the highest of A at the moment.
All right, so the next one that we have is Firestorm. And Firestorm's interesting because you get MP40s, you get the Flame Panzer.
Yep.
Then you also get the Flame Barrage on the support gun. You get the Oboe Blitz Truck, which is not a resource, ability, but it's instead a reinforcement and rapid maneuver. So you could put, let's say, the Volk squads with MP40s in it, charge the enemy, get behind them, and drop it. I believe 151, you did that with Skippy against my base and literally murdered it. Yeah.
Gave it a good shot. But again, the Sturms also get flamethrowers. It's good for. It's like a comparable to the Soviet half-track in regards to that Opel Blitz truck, and it really is one of the only OKWs with a direct strike. So it has some good utility. The only downside is it doesn't have the late game potential. Like a lot of OKW has a lot of late game units. Like we just discussed, the Sturm Tiger, Sturm Panther, or not Sturm Panther, Yag Tiger. This lacks that, but what it makes up for is great map control for city environment and direct strike. So I think this is an easy A tier. Because when you're fighting like the British in the city and you can burn them out hopping from building to building, it's the best thing in the world. On an open map like Steppes, it's less good. But like when it's used at its best, there's nothing that can really put it down.
It's a hard counter to emplacements with
absolutely.
the fire abilities So I could see A tier.
Yeah, easy A tier.
All right, now we get into fortifications. Fortifications, they changed this one since last time and combined two elements into one doctrine. So you have heavy fortifications, which is the first commander pick. Then essentially you have was it For the Fatherland or something?
Yeah, it's their replacement. Like, infantry get it. I believe a defensive bonus.
Yeah.
In friendly territory, if I'm not mistaken. This is a doctrine
And then LEFH, Pack 43, and zeroing. That said, it has not been a high-picked doctrine as of late, from what I could tell. It's still picked.
No, I think the problem with it is, again, I think what really made this one suffer is the fact that anyone that is playing at a higher rank knows to get a direct strike. LEFHs are good. And they're really good when you can mass them. Like if everyone on your team is an LEFH and you're firing on an enemy, and you get them so fast that the enemy can't counter, it's amazing.
Yeah.
But it's not as good as it once was. Also,
I know why. And again, it's because another doctrine got nerfed. So the ultimate tag team duo that we brought up before no longer exists.
Yeah, Spec Ops, in which case you get the flare and then you do zeroing. Now zeroing only is, I think it's smaller if I'm not mistaken, right?
I think it's about the same size and it's cheaper.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, all that I know is zeroing doesn't
it's
feel
still
like
good.
as like, it was.
Yeah, maybe they, again, I haven't noticed the decrease in power, but I've definitely noticed that like other things, like why go Pack 43 when a Yag Tiger is so much better? Why go fortifications when you can get Falsemaker with it? Because they combined it. So a lot of the assets that you would see in this is no longer viable. And while the Stuka is a supreme unit, and again, in some ways the LFH can be better, between the two, you want to be mobile rather than stuck. Especially with how many counter fortification abilities the allies have now. Or counter stationary artillery. Not the fact I don't see LEFH spam. I absolutely do. But it is something that I do think it is weaker down the line. So if I'm going to be honest, I think because of its positioning, I think it's B tier. I think it's the middle.
Yeah, Spec Ops being nerfed from our last discussion really hit this one hard because those two were so good together. Having a flare and then zeroing, you could clear an enemy area easily. Now, assault artillery is basically the go-to. And zeroing is still good, but most people are not dumb enough to be on the front line when zeroing occurs. So yeah, and artillery can be nerfed.
Oh, you know why? Because also you can see it now. That's the other thing. On the minimap, you can see it.
Yep. So I think in this case it's a solid B tier. It's a good support, and when it hits, it hits, but it just doesn't have the power of the it doesn't control the meta like it used to. And I think now, if I'm not mistaken, LAFHs have also been nerfed because they can't do the counter barrage since our last discussion.
Well, that and a few other things, but I've definitely seen
the
less.
And the nerf of zeroing just caused this to really drop from, I think we had S tier last time, now down to B tier.
Yeah. Next commander that we have is the Overwatch commander. This has the Goliath, the flares you put on points for the Fatherland, LEFH, JLI infantry, and as well a amazing airstrike with so many planes coming on in to support you. Now, is JLI infantry dramatically better than Punchful Slayers? Well, they're good at ambushing. I'll say that. They can camouflage very well. They're good at, I believe, booby traps.
They are amazing against the British. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Disgusting against British infantry.
Yep.
Specifically.
Goliath is always great to use. But it is more of a risk-reward type thing for using munitions. For the Fatherland's Go in defense, LFH is pretty good. Now, between Fortifications and this, out of the two, I would probably prefer this for LFH. Between, again, I also prefer this for the strike because it's so powerful against armor. Sure, it can be shot down, but the amount of planes you can call in is incredible. Yeah. And then, yeah, I think it is probably an A tier, but I don't think it's a high A tier.
We can discuss the ranks of all that's in A at the very end, but I think at least at this point it is bottom of A. It's real. The infantry is powerful. The strike, the column is great. It just doesn't have. It's just not as great as the competition, which is like saying, hey, this luxury car isn't as good as these sports luxury cars. You know what I mean? Like it's just, it's they're both great. It's just some are just, you can tell, are just better.
No, makes sense. But no, it's one of those things that I think that Overwatch is better than Fortifications, but there are some things that bring it back for me, and that's because the Goliath is so it can go hit or miss. The JLI, I mean, between JLI and Punchful Slayers, I think I'd prefer the Punchful Slayers.
Yeah, but still, it's an A. Like, the units aren't bad. It's just bad in comparison to other units, like, of their own faction.
It's still top tier.
Yeah.
But next up, we have ourselves, was it Grand Offensive? Or Strategic? I always get this mixed up. This Doctrine, this face. It's because of the fact that Strategic Reserve and Grand Offensive came out at the same time. It's Grand Offensive. And ever since then, I've gotten both confused. But this is Grand Offensive, and I think it should just go in B tier. The reason I say B tier is this. Punchful Slayers, it's better in Breakthrough. While the STG-44 upgrade is good for the Obelsoldaten, I think a lot of people, unless they're in a very urban map, prefer the other because the LMG is better at like long-range warfare on bigger maps. Whereas in urban warfare, where there's a lot more cover, it makes more sense for that weapon to move from place to place. Smoke is fine, and the Panzer Commander is fine, but the big weird thing about this Doctrine is the Tiger. Because, like, I just covered a game with 2 Vet 5 King Tigers, and then the other Tiger died pretty quickly. Comparatively, so if you're OKW, it is a command Tiger, so it is that interesting thing, but I just find people are like, I'll just pay a little more resources for the King. Because at least it has overall, I believe, more armor and a better gun, and overall just seems to do or perform a lot better than the base Tiger. But 151, what do you think?
You're not wrong. The King Tiger is a better tank than the Command Tiger. The main benefit of this is the absolute domination you can have when when you can bring out a Tiger. Like, it only takes like another minute, maybe 2, compared to a Panther to get the Tiger. And the benefit is immense because you have anti-infantry, and it's so early that if the enemy, let's say, wants to double down, I've used this Doctrine recently, and the benefit of is if the enemy double downs on like a Sherman, T-34s, something, and they don't have a lot of AT, when a Tiger shows up so early in the game, it can hard counter an entire enemy force. I fought 2 armies with just a Tiger in my infantry, and I was swatting them away because the anti-infantry capability is so good. The anti-vehicle power is so good. Yes, it's not as good as the King Tiger, but if you have a decent fuel income and you can get that Tiger out at a good time, it is unparalleled the damage that you can bring to the enemies. Now, you are 100% right with everything else. The smoke at its best can block MGs and give recon. It's not amazing. There are no Collins for this. The STGs have been better used elsewhere. The main caveat I have with that is the Tiger is still very good. And
Yeah.
the STGs are still good. The smoke recon is great for when you want to just recon the enemy behind enemy lines, because there's not a lot of recons that we've discussed from all the other doctrines. If your team needs a recon,
to be fair, the OKW, the reason why I diminished that is because the OKW now has a call-in for recon via the half track.
This is true. It's just one that, like, you don't have to get the unit. You can just have it. Like, it is a little easier in that regard. Especially with the half track being nerfed, or like the IR being nerfed a little bit. It's less, I don't know. I see it less than I think this is just something of ease of use. Now, everything else with the Doctrine is okay. Like, Panther Fusiliers, right? With this? Right?
Yeah. So why would you go this or Breakthrough? It's
I'd go Breakthrough, but I mean, like, I would choose this if I wouldn't go full Panzer Fusiliers like I would with Jagdtiger. I would go maybe like in between, maybe 1 or 2 Panzer Fusiliers and like have some others, like, and then if I lose them, I immediately switch to Obersodan with STGs. So I don't think this Doctrine is bad. I think it's really good when it hits, right?
Yeah.
But I think when it hits is a lot harder to do because you need a lot of things to happen at the right time. So I'm thinking B tier.
Yeah, B tier. That's why I put it.
Okay.
Okay, so next up, we have Falsemaker. And I'm going to leave this at A tier, though. 151, you can
I've already
talk about
put it
it.
next. Please continue.
All right, so fine. We'll leave it there. Falsemaker, the infantry itself, the Falsemakers no longer have the what's it called? The upgrade in terms of what's it? I'm trying to think of the name. Faust. They don't have the Faust ability. You have to upgrade them, right, with those LMGs. Technically the recon itself is not as valuable because of the fact that, again, you have the half track that can do stuff. But go ahead. Why is it at S tier?
I mean, the Falsemakers literally carry this to the S tier by themselves.
Yes.
The Falsemakers are so good. You get the upgrade with these suckers, and they absolutely obliterate everything. The upgrade is, I think, what, 60, 80?
Well, they're a lot cheaper now. Weren't they like 1440 at one point or something ridiculous? Like,
yeah, they were. And they're like,
or
they're relatively, they're not that expensive. Yeah, they're expensive to reinforce, but they're not as expensive as they used to be. And you get like I've seen people use like 2 or 3 of these, and they just gun down infantry once they're fully upgraded. Once these suckers start getting better in 2, they are nightmares, walking nightmares. The ability to fortify is also always great, and their call-in, late game call-in is devastating. It goes against, if I'm not mistaken, it goes against infantry and vehicles.
And it reinforces too.
Yeah. You can reinforce. It is so powerful. Like, you get basically you get the best infantry, some of the best infantry in the game, and then you have a call-in late game. You can't ask for more. It's literally perfect. The only thing I think OKW would ask more for in this is if they got a big heavy tank, but you get that with the King Tiger. Like, you don't need a big call-in. You have everything else that OKW naturally provides. This just shores up like everything else that you're missing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So yeah, no, I just don't think that it reaches that point. But if you believe strongly enough with the Falsemaker, I will say combining the 2 fortifications does help make this a lot stronger. I will say in that regard, the airstrike is still very good, though. I will say Overwatch is better. But no, I'm fine with keeping it S tier, low S tier, but S tier.
I think this would be first, but I will accept it as long as we can get this into S tier. I think you're gonna notice in the comments. Quote me, like, tell me if I'm wrong. But Falsemakers, for most people, I would assume is the best commander in the game. Like, or best commander easily for OKW. Questionable for in the game, but like easily one of the best. Next up, what is that? Overwatch?
It's Scavenger. That's next up.
Oh, right, Scavenger. I just think Ostwind. I just see this guy with the Ostwind.
So I think originally we put Scavenger in C tier. I think originally we did. And to be fair, I still see Scavenger is not as proficient. There are a lot of 1v1 people who absolutely adore Scavenger because they get an Ostwind out and the JLI are so good. But here are my complaints. The infiltration grenades are fine, but I just don't like, again, and you can definitely use them very effectively, don't get me wrong. But again, that's if a player's paying attention, they can dodge it. If the arty strike, there's better direct strikes with other commanders. If we're talking about the worst thing about this doctrine, it's the getting munitions for Rex. It's like, okay, great, but like the Brits have like a escalating scale of scavenge, so they can scavenge King Tiger and get enough for a Valentine, or they get a fuel and they get a ton of munitions. But it's crazy. It's nuts. So I think there are some negatives with this. I think there's some positives with this doctrine. But I will contend it's not C tier. I think it's a low B.
Oh no, I think it's C tier. I think I don't care what people say about 1v1s or whatnot. I don't care, because we talk about
4v4s.
We talk about 3v3s and 4v4s. And Scavenge has got some perks. You're right, but it also has plenty of negatives. Like, nobody really cares about the scavenge ability in this game. Like, okay, you could like, if you get like a small bonus, how many people are actually getting that? And if you do, is it greater? It's not that much better than like the basic scavenge OKW you can normally do.
Yeah, and then would you rather get JLI with Overwatch with the airstrike, or scavenge with that direct strike?
Well, even the thing with the direct strike is like it has more shells for more munitions that you have. But the whole problem with that is, like, it's not that significant. Like, you would expect, like, if you had like an insane amount of munitions, this sucker would be like zeroing on steroids or something. But it's not. It's just one area gets pummeled and it gets a few extra shells, and that's it. And those few extra shells aren't enough to like break. Like, what are you firing this on? A British emplacement? If it bunkers down, this isn't gonna kill it. Like, it's not enough extra shells to knock it out. It's not like anything insane. So it's honestly kind of an expensive call-in for what it does, and it's not worth the extra firepower that you're bringing down. The Ostwind is laughable in certain. Like,
Ostwind's fine. I contend the Ostwind can be very good, especially compared to a half track.
Good, but like, you're like, why I say it's laughable is because you're getting something. It's like the Tiger except worse, because you get it, but it's good against anti-air, sure. But at a certain point, when the enemy has a line of tank destroyers and you have the Ostwind, I would rather have a Tiger any day of the week. So I think it loses that initial scare at the very beginning, and unless the enemy has just refuses to get any tank guns, like, it's gonna get countered sooner rather than later. So I think there's just as many positives as there are negatives with this. So I think C tier is exactly where it should be, if not D tier. Compared to everyone else, I think this is definitely the weakest bulletin. Actually, no. Actually, I actually now disagree with that. I don't think this is the weakest. I think this is one of the weakest, because now we're going to discuss.
Now let's get to the weakest. Special operations.
Yes. Now let's get to the weakest. So C tier is good for Scavenger?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Then discuss why Spec Ops has fallen from grace.
Well, the Command Panther itself is now the holder of the recon. So now it deploys recon flares from the Command Panther. So you have to be in range of the Command Panther, meaning you just have to be on the front. The problem with that is, one, the OKW now have recon via the half track, and the half track itself, based on what it can do, can already see very far. Now you can say that the flares can go overhead, but so can the recon flare. You can say Greyshot, they can't shoot it down, but okay, it's still on the front. I mean, it's not that big of a difference in my humble opinion. Then you have, let's see, what else do you get? You get was it the officer, right? The Sturm officer. So why would you go this over breakthrough? Why would you? I mean, like, yes, infiltration grenades. We'll get to that, but also radio silence. I believe they gave it a speed boost. I believe they keep trying to make it viable in some weird way, but they keep changing it, then nerfing it, then making it better, and back and forth. So yeah, I can see definitely why that people are kind of more mixed on that. And again, the SCG-44, I would rather, if I'm going with that, go with another Doctrine. So it's a weird one for me. I just don't, like, I'm trying to think of how viable. Do you go with like an almost a Dotton heavy push with the with the what's it called, Storm Officer. But then again, I could do the same thing with Panzerfusiliers, and in my opinion, they're better at clipping infantry on the retreat. They're better at wearing down infantry, and they have a long-range AT grenade, and they have maybe not as powerful grenade, but they still have a grenade. So again, I'm just like, sure, there's also that like blitz thing that you can get, but then also like I believe a grand defensive, unless no, not grand defensive, sorry. Your breakthrough also has like decapture, so it also has a special bonus for infantry. So I don't know. I'm trying to like, the Command Panther is fine, but honestly, between that and the Command Panzer that the Austere get, the Command Panzer is like a secondary unit. The Command Panther is literally your primary, so you're constantly keeping that thing on the front, which is fine until it dies.
You're really being nice to this. This commander died. They shot this commander. They took it out back and ODL'd it. And let me tell you why.
I specifically say the Panther because of the recon. You have to keep pushing it further than you normally would.
Yep, exactly. The benefit of the original Flare was you could deploy it anywhere and then bring zeroing down, and it would wipe an area.
Or direct strike.
Yeah, it would wipe an area that the enemy wouldn't be able to like protect. Now that's not the case. Even if you like throw a recon flare, like if say you go to plane over, right?
Yeah.
And you drop zeroing. Well, if they have no sight, then it doesn't matter. In this situation, the benefit is you have to run your very expensive tank behind enemy lines or into an enemy line, flare that area, and then cool back. Now the problem with that is if you are running your tank into an area filled with enemy units for a zeroing, then that is going to cause massive problems for your tank, which probably means it's going to die.
Yeah.
So like the risk reward is insane with the Command Panther Flare. And everything else about this doctrine is okay, if not infiltration grenades, great.
Or done better somewhere else.
Yeah, infiltration grenades, great. But like it's good. STGs, good. Radio silence, I mean, good on a flank, but like very situational. And then that's pretty much it. Am I missing anything? Is there anything else? It's like they're good, but like nothing tangible. It's all very situational. And again, this whole doctrine is like focused on if you have fortifications. But with the nerfing of the LAFH and that commander, and that one taking a plummet, and people choosing other doctrines, that means this one that was only good.
It's like Gohan and Piccolo.
And
you ruined one, you ruined both.
Yeah, it's the worst of the two. It just flies out the window. And the Grand Panther, you're right, is not as good as the command tank or the command panzer of the Austere because it provides a defense bonus, and that is way better than accuracy and speed.
All right, so let's go over.
This is a D. I honestly think this is a D.
Oh, D.
I think it's D. Like, no one picks it. No one chooses this. And the only
I just had a game someone picked it.
A B tier commander, which no one chooses.
Someone really picked it in the game I casted, but that being said,
did they win? Did they win 117? Did they win?
They did, but it wasn't because of the doctrine.
Yeah.
The infiltration grenades were fine, but the enemy kept dodging them. They never they had some troops, but
what I'm saying is the commander didn't cause the win.
No,
that
I mean
he
charged with a Panther, not a command. As far as I recall, he charged with a Panther, not a Command Panther.
And what? Oh yeah, and the Command Panther being locked out, so you have to choose the Command Panther, meaning you can't choose King Tiger.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah,
locks out your end game. It locks out your ability to get anti-infantry end game potential. Like you have to go Stukas, and they nerfed it. They nerfed one of my favorite commanders, and it's D tier. It's in the bottom barrel. No one's gonna choose it. No one's gonna remember it. It's just gonna stay there until CoH2 passes along, turns to ash. It will be the one no one remembers.
All right, so D and C, I think we have pretty much sound. I think Fortifications is better than Strategic Offensive or Grand Offensive, whatever it is.
I'll agree with that.
Okay. Overwatch, Firestorm, Elite Armored. And those three, how would you?
Elite Armored A is the first one, Firestorm second, and then Overwatch third.
Okay, that's how I have it too. And then I say Breakthrough's better than Falsemaker.
I will leave the comments to rip you apart, but I will accept this.
Rip me apart. I mean, I honestly think the Yag Tiger is more viable against infantry and armor. That it also has is as good amount of a solid infantry choices than Falsemaker in the ground Luftwaffe doctrine. So
yeah. I genuinely believe I would agree that.
And a lot of our choices are based on 4v4 games. If you think this is better, in a 1v1, I get it, but this is like 4v4 mindset.
Yeah, 3v3, 4v4 mindset. Like 1v1. Well, we're gonna talk about the British soon, and there's like a commander in there that in 1v1, great. Like I've seen it, it's really good. But in case of 3v3, 4v4, it just gets overshadowed.
I think I know what you're talking about, and I actually think I like that commander a lot more now. That might not be my worst British one, but we'll see. Anyway, leave your comments down below. What do you think? Anyway, this has been a Greyshot17
and Greyshot151,
and we'll see all of you next time.
Till then, later.
Hello everyone, before y'all go, you can check out more content above, you can subscribe, and you can hear as I talk about some amazing people who support me on Patreon, which include Folkvard, Aphyria, Joey G240, Malam, Ace, ShinobiWarrior, Pyroshark, Sumtool, Epic Pleb. Thank you all for your incredible support. You literally help this channel keep on growing, so thank you. If you want to support the channel, again, check out some of the stuff I mentioned. Otherwise, I'll see all of you next time.